In our last video, we looked at how it is possible to become a millionaire even if you're on a normal salary. And today we look a bit more about how you might do this. So hello and welcome back to our channel. A couple of weeks ago, I showed how it is possible for someone on a median British salary of around £36,000 to build a large 6 or even 7-figure investment pot over a lifetime of getting investment right. And as I showed, someone on that income should be able to save and invest about £400 a month across their pension and ISA accounts, around £100 of which will come from their employer and the government. And doing this over many years can deliver an outcome that all too few people understand is even possible. In the main, because as surveys tell us, 60% or more of British adults don't understand the power of compounding. As I said in that video, one of the biggest things that prevents people from actually getting this result is the fact that so many people are entirely cynical about it. There are many reasons for this, and a good number of those are explicitly addressed in that video. And those same criticisms also appeared in the comments section of the video, as so often happens when you publish this kind of content. And the other thing that emerged from that video is that lots of people wanted to understand more about what they might actually do. Since publishing it, lots of people have been in touch with me to ask about that. Because many of the people who watched that video are new to our channel, they may not have seen the extent to which I've sought to cover all of this stuff in real detail throughout the course of our video series on this YouTube channel and also in my books. So today, I wanted to address some of those key criticisms head on to fight the cynicism, if you like, given how damaging that is for millions of people, and also highlight some of the key resources I've made available over the years to help you with that how when it comes to getting investment right. So the first criticism quite a few people made of the video was that lots of people earn less than the median salary. And related to that, it was therefore unrealistic to think that people might be able to save and invest as much as £400 a month. And as I said in my answer to several of those comments, I fully acknowledge that many people do indeed earn less than £36,000 a year, particularly younger people. But there are a few points to make here. First, many people do earn more than that median salary. Half of all working adults do, which is many millions of people. And the evidence shows that many millions of these people are not making the best of their finances. This is really bad for them and even worse for our society, a point I've been making for years and a big part of what makes me want to produce these videos and write my books. The other point to make is that lots of people earn more as they get older. So of course it's true that millions of people earn less than the median salary by definition, but an awful lot of people will average that kind of income, or even potentially better than that, over the course of their working life. Perhaps you earn £20,000 or so in your early 20s, but by the time you're in your 30s and beyond, you might be on much more than that. And over a lifetime, you will therefore be able to achieve the kind of life-changing result that I shared in that last video. Perhaps even more important, however, even if you are on a lower salary right now, this should absolutely not prevent you from saving and investing something. The best investment platforms and fund supermarkets let you start with as little as £25 a month, for example, and this is absolutely worth doing as compared to doing nothing. And to illustrate this point, if £1 invested today achieves long-run stock market returns of around 7.5%, after 20 years, that pound would have become nearly £4.25. After 30 years, nearly £8.75, and after 40 years, just over £18, or 18 times your money. So saving and investing even very small amounts of money, if you're on a lower income, is still absolutely worth doing. And particularly when you consider that you should be getting at least some free money from the government and from your employer for your pension too, if you do have a job. Perhaps the most important point to make overall is how critical it is to get started. First, because of the incredible power of compounding that we've just seen, because if you do start small, and no matter how small, you'll enable yourself to benefit from the magic of compound interest as you go through your life. Over long periods of time, very small amounts of money can actually become much larger amounts. And secondly, and perhaps even more importantly, the evidence is that if you do manage to do this and build a regular automated saving and investment habit, you're then far more likely to save and invest more over time, particularly as you see the results you can achieve. And thirdly, if you do this, you're also far more likely to learn more about money and investment over time than if you don't. There's nothing like having some actual money on the line to increase your interest in the topic and the amount of time you spend focused on it, thinking about it, and hopefully taking action. This is likely to be a very good thing too. Just getting started with investment in some shape or form will more than likely nudge you onto a completely different trajectory in your life. You might only start with very small amounts, but once you've set this up as a key life habit, you're then much more likely to increase those numbers over time. The evidence is that this has a good chance of being properly life-changing, certainly as compared to doing nothing. And the tragedy, particularly in the UK, is just how few people do this. So the next criticism leveled at that video was all about inflation. A number of people accused me of forgetting about inflation and pointed out that the money you may have built over many years of investing won't buy you very much when you get there because of inflation. And to be fair, I did make this very point myself in that original video, so perhaps folk didn't watch it all the way through or missed that bit. Inflation will reduce the value of any pot you might build to in future, fully agreed. Set against this, however, this just makes it even more important to invest. Because if there's high inflation in future, it's absolutely critical to attempt to outperform that inflation by becoming an investor. The worst possible thing to do is not to invest or to save in cash or again to do nothing at all. I've actually been writing in some detail about inflation for about 20 years. It's one of the most important topics in my books and one of the reasons I've advocated investing in gold for about the same amount of time. And I've also made a series of videos on just how poorly understood inflation is and how important it is to understand it. And I've made a series about gold too, for what it's worth. And one key point to make about inflation is that it can vary a great deal, particularly over many decades of your life as an investor. And as I said in that last video, at some point in our lifetimes, governments all over the world might finally realize that sound money would be better for all of us than the magic money trees, endless money printing, debasement, and resultant inflation that we've all had to suffer in the last several decades. And if they do, inflation in future could well be lower than it has been in recent years, and your real investment returns higher as a result. Again, whatever happens, it's extremely likely that you will be far better off if you become an investor than if you don't. And the last main criticism, which is somewhat related to that inflation argument, is that you won't be able to make the kinds of investment returns I used in the example I provided in that video. And I used an assumption of 8%. Lots of people criticize this as basically impossible to achieve. And my counter-argument here is that it is certainly difficult to achieve, but actually not entirely unreasonable. And as evidence for my position, I would say the following. Firstly, American equities or American shares have delivered more than 10% a year on average for the last century. In fact, for more than a century. Secondly, gold, which I talk about a lot, and as I say, I've recorded a series about, has delivered more than 10% a year for the last 25 years. Thirdly, UK small caps delivered more than 16% a year from 1955 to 2021. It has been possible to make double-digit returns in many times and places throughout history. And the other thing to consider is that there is a chance investment returns in the future might actually be structurally higher than they have been in the past. This is because economic growth in the decades ahead could actually be some way better than many of us expect. As human progress and extraordinary technological developments in things like AI, quantum computing, robotics, and biotech deliver amazing things and a huge amount of real wealth as a result. I fully concede that it is hard to average an 8% real return over a lifetime of investing. But there are ways of approaching investment that can get you close to that, and if you're lucky, you might even do better. There are a number of ways to do this, all of which I've covered in my books and in this video series. So to get to that how of how to do this, There are a number of key things you want to understand, all of which I've made videos about in this series. First, you need to understand the difference between investing and trading, and make sure that your primary focus is on investing and not on trading. You need to understand how to invest in entire markets and very likely steer clear of investing in single stocks. You'll want to make the right decisions about property, given how important this can be for your ability to invest in all the other key asset classes. And then there are 4 key approaches that will maximize the chance that you get the result you want, each of which I've also covered in my video series entitled How to Invest So That Crashes Don't Matter. And as a reminder, these 4 things are: first, making sure that you invest for the very long run, basically for the whole of your adult life. Investing is not something that you should do for a little while and then stop. It should be a non-negotiable life habit that you decide to do and continue to do every month from the minute you earn any money until the time you have built meaningful and hopefully life-changing wealth. Secondly, you should invest regularly every month, ideally automatically by direct debit, to take you and your psychological weaknesses out of the equation and smooth your returns over time. Thirdly, and something that is very poorly understood, you should basically entirely ignore the news when it comes to your investments. And finally, which is also very important, you should ensure that you get your mix of assets roughly right based on your age and stage. This is something called asset allocation and is a very important and often neglected subject when it comes to personal finance. The key is to ensure that you have the right mix of higher risk, higher return, aggressive investments and lower risk, more defensive ones. If you can get to grips with these key topics and take a series of actually relatively simple steps, you've got a really good chance of securing a life-changing result. And no matter what the cynics might have you believe. Remember, as I said last time, and as I so often say, and I'll say again, pessimists sound smart, optimists make money. And you have to ask yourself, would you rather sound smart and cynical or be rich? So if you'd like to learn about this stuff, please do use our various playlists to do that we've been showing throughout the course of this video, or simply watch this whole video series from oldest to newest in order. And if you're willing to make a small investment, you might also consider getting hold of my 2 personal finance books. How to Own the World, my first one, is the big picture theory and explains all about financial markets. And Live on Less, Invest the Rest is more the practice of how you might get everything humming. And I hope you find all of our resources extremely helpful, as we know that many people have done already over the last many years. So that's it for today. As ever, if you want to ensure that you're one of the first to see our future videos when they're published, please do click the subscribe and bell buttons. Please also subscribe to our free email service from the Plain English Finance website, because you'll get content over and above just these videos. And if you'd like to hear from me most regularly, or certainly more regularly than these 2 videos each month, please do connect with me on any or indeed all of LinkedIn, Facebook, or X. Until next time, I wish you and yours the very best.